Welcome, crime enthusiasts and mystery seekers. Today, we unravel a real-life detective saga that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you never miss out on our intriguing investigations. Without further ado, let's dive into the captivating world of crime and justice. Jeffrey Dahmer, a glimpse into darkness. The name Jeffrey Dahmer resonates with a chilling infamy in the annals of American crime history. Often referred to as the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, Dahmer's heinous acts of murder, dismemberment, and cannibalism shocked the world and challenged our understanding of human depravity. This story delves deep into the life and crimes of one of the most notorious serial killers of the 20th century. From his troubled childhood to his gruesome acts and eventual demise, we unfold a narrative that is as harrowing as it is true, offering insights into the dark corners of a disturbed mind. This documentary aims to present a comprehensive, fact-based account of Dahmer's life, exploring not just the what and how of his crimes, but also the why, the psychological underpinnings of his actions. And now a word from our sponsor.
All right, guys, so the debt negotiation company that helps people with IRS back tax debt and credit card debt and stuff like that, doing a fantastic job with our clients and helping them get out of debt. They're reducing the fees. They're getting rid of penalties, which half of it's penalties, and people don't know that. So they are really good. So I want to just throw this out there and let you know that there's a good company that can help you. Don't file bankruptcy. Don't ignore your tax debt. The link is below. Give them a call. You'll be really glad you did.
The troubled beginnings of a serial killer. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From the outset, his life was marked by an unsettling normalcy, with no apparent indications of the horrors to come. His father, Lionel Dahmer, was a chemist, and his mother, Joyce, was known for being tense and craving attention and affection. Their marriage was fraught with tension and disagreements, creating a tumultuous home environment. Dahmer's early years were relatively uneventful, yet certain peculiarities began to emerge. As a child, he displayed an intense interest in dead animals, a fascination that would later evolve into something far more sinister. Friends and family recalled Dahmer collecting carcasses and dismembering them, ostensibly out of curiosity about how animals fitted together. His school life was marked by a growing sense of alienation. Although initially seen as a bright and promising student, Dahmer's grades began to drop as he entered adolescence. He became increasingly withdrawn and uncommunicative, showing little interest in social interactions or activities. His parents' divorce when he was 18 only deepened his sense of isolation and abandonment. During his teenage years, Dahmer began to struggle with his sexual identity, grappling with feelings he couldn't understand or articulate. It was also during this time that his fantasies started blending with violent thoughts, a disturbing convergence that would later define his modus operandi. The first alarmingly aberrant behavior was Dahmer's alcohol abuse, which started in his teens. He was known to drink heavily, even during school hours, using alcohol as a coping mechanism for his internal turmoil. This addiction would persist throughout his life, often playing a role in his criminal acts. However, the most ominous turning point in Dahmer's early life was his first murder at the age of 18, shortly after his high school graduation. His victim was a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks, whom Dahmer lured to his home. What began as a hidden, dark fantasy rapidly transformed into a horrifying reality, setting the stage for a series of gruesome acts that would span over a decade. The evolution of a monster. The murder of Stephen Hicks was just the beginning of Jeffrey Dahmer's descent into criminality. After the first murder, Dahmer enrolled at Ohio State University but dropped out after one semester due to his alcohol problem. He briefly served in the U.S. Army but was discharged due to his alcoholism. This period of his life was marked by a struggle to contain his murderous impulses, a battle he would eventually lose. Dahmer moved back to Ohio and lived with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin in 1982. For a brief period, this seemed to stabilize him. He found employment and was arrested only for minor offenses. However, beneath this veneer of normalcy, his dark fantasies continued to fester. In 1987, Dahmer's urges resurfaced with a vengeance. His second victim was Stephen Tuomi, whom he met at a bar, and later killed at a hotel room. Dahmer claimed he had no memory of the murder, a pattern that would recur in subsequent confessions, often attributing the memory loss to heavy drinking. From this point on, Dahmer's crimes escalated both in frequency and brutality. He developed a pattern of luring young men, often from gay bars or shopping malls, to his grandmother's home under various pretenses. Once there, he would drug, strangle, and dismember them. Dahmer's methodology was not just about killing, it was an attempt to exert control and fulfill his twisted fantasies. He engaged in necrophilia and preserved body parts, driven by a desire to keep his victims with him as long as possible. As his crimes continued, Dahmer's techniques became more sophisticated. He experimented with ways to render his victims submissive but alive, such as drilling holes into their skulls and injecting hydrochloric acid or boiling water. These horrifying experiments reflect a deeper psychological pathology. Dahmer was not just a killer, but a man driven by a perverse need for companionship and control. During this period, Dahmer managed to evade detection, partly due to his victims being primarily from marginalized groups, including gay and black men, whose disappearances often didn't receive immediate attention. Additionally, Dahmer's unassuming demeanor and the fact that he lived with his grandmother helped him avoid suspicion. Dahmer's arrest in 1991 marked the end of his reign of terror. The police found photographs of dismembered bodies and various human remains in his apartment, unveiling the gruesome extent of his crimes. The public was horrified as details of his acts surfaced, bringing to light one of the most chilling cases of serial murder in American history. A chilling pattern of murder and mayhem. Jeffrey Dahmer's killing spree, spanning from 1978 to 1991, encompasses a series of crimes that are difficult to comprehend in their cruelty and depravity. Each crime he committed was marked by a chilling pattern, revealing a deep-seated pathology. After his second murder in 1987, Dahmer's activities became more frequent and his methods more gruesome. He carefully selected his victims, typically young men, often from marginalized groups. His victims ranged in age from 14 to 32, encompassing a variety of racial and ethnic backgrounds. Dahmer's method of luring these men was consistent. He often promised money or sex, or simply offered them company. Once he had brought his victims to his home, Dahmer employed a set procedure. He would first drug them with sedatives, usually in the form of laced drinks. Once they were incapacitated, he would strangle them to death. Post-mortem, Dahmer would engage in sexual acts with the corpses before dismembering them. His fascination with body parts led him to preserve skulls and other parts as macabre trophies. One of the most harrowing aspects of Dahmer's crimes was his attempt to create zombies, submissive, eternally youthful companions. He experimented on some victims while they were still alive, drilling into their skulls and injecting acid or boiling water. These horrifying experiments were driven by his desire to create a living but unresisting partner, reflecting a profound level of delusion and depravity. The extent of Dahmer's crimes began to surface in the early morning hours of May 27, 1991, when one of his intended victims, Tracy Edwards, managed to escape. Edwards led police back to Dahmer's apartment, where they discovered Polaroids of dismembered victims, which led to a full search revealing a horrifying array of evidence, including human remains in his fridge and freezer, skulls and bones in a filing cabinet, and barrels containing decomposing bodies. Dahmer's apartment on North 25th Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, became a house of horrors in the public eye. The sheer volume and nature of the evidence uncovered was staggering, painting a picture of a man who had descended into a unique and horrific brand of madness. Psychological analyses of Dahmer post-arrest suggested a complex interplay of factors contributing to his behavior. He was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and a psychotic disorder. Dahmer himself attributed his actions to a deep-seated loneliness and a craving for control. He sought to create a situation where his victims would never leave him, indicative of profound disturbances in his ability to form healthy interpersonal relationships. The public and media reaction to the discovery of Dahmer's crimes was one of shock and disbelief. His actions challenged the societal understanding of human behavior, raising questions about the nature of evil and the capacity for brutality within an individual. The end of a nightmare, Dahmer's apprehension and judgment. Jeffrey Dahmer's arrest on July 22, 1991, marked the end of a gruesome chapter in criminal history. The breakthrough came when Tracy Edwards, a potential victim, managed to escape from Dahmer's apartment and flagged down 2 Milwaukee police officers. Edwards recounted his harrowing experience, leading the officers back to Dahmer's residence. There, they uncovered a trove of horrifying evidence, photographs of dismembered bodies, skulls and remains that left no doubt of Dahmer's guilt. Dahmer was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. His trial began in January 1992 and was as sensational as it was disturbing. In a move that surprised many, Dahmer pled guilty but insane to 15 counts of murder. The insanity plea sparked a heated debate about the nature of criminal responsibility and the legal definition of insanity. During the trial, gruesome details of Dahmer's crimes were laid bare, causing widespread revulsion and fascination. Psychiatrists testified about Dahmer's mental health, painting a picture of a deeply troubled individual. Dahmer himself spoke candidly about his actions, showing what many perceived as a lack of remorse. He described his motivations and actions in a chillingly matter-of-fact manner, further unnerving the public and the jury.
For us to tell the world that if there are people out there with these disorders, maybe they can get some help before they end up being hurt or hurting someone. I think the trial did that. I take all the blame for what I did. I hurt many people.
The trial's central contention was not whether Dahmer had committed the crimes, but whether he was legally sane at the time. The defense argued that his compulsive behavior and lack of control over his actions indicated severe mental illness. In contrast, the prosecution maintained that Dahmer was fully aware of his actions and chose to commit the murders despite understanding their wrongfulness. On February 15, 1992, the jury found Dahmer sane and therefore guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a total of 957 years in prison, a sentence that reflected the severity and inhumanity of his crimes. The trial and its aftermath sparked a broader conversation about the nature of evil and the criminal justice system's ability to deal with individuals like Dahmer. It raised significant concerns about societal neglect of mental health issues and the potential dangers posed by such neglect. Dahmer's case also highlighted systemic failures, particularly in how law enforcement and society treated the disappearances of marginalized individuals. Many of Dahmer's victims were young, gay, Black, or Latino men, and their disappearances had not been given adequate attention, a fact that allowed Dahmer's spree to continue unchecked for years. A killer's demise and the lingering shadows of his acts. Jeffrey Dahmer's incarceration brought a close to his brutal crimes, but not to the impact he had on the victims' families, the legal system, and society at large. He spent his prison life at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin, and was reportedly unassuming and cooperative. Dahmer expressed remorse in some of his later interviews, stating his wish for death as a release from his own thoughts and urges. Dahmer's life came to an abrupt end on November 28, 1994, when he was beaten to death by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver, at the Columbia Correctional Institution. Scarver, who later explained his actions by claiming he was acting on divine instruction, assaulted Dahmer and another inmate with a metal bar from the prison gym. Dahmer was pronounced dead in the hospital from severe head trauma. The death of Jeffrey Dahmer did little to close the wounds of those affected by his actions. For the families of his victims, the pain and loss were irreparable. The aftermath of Dahmer's crimes opened a dialogue about the intersection of mental health and criminal behavior, the treatment of sexual minorities and people of color by law enforcement, and the prevention of similar tragedies. In the years following Dahmer's death, his life and crimes have been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and films, reflecting a continued fascination and horror with his case. His story serves as a dark reminder of the depths of human depravity and the importance of vigilance in recognizing and addressing early signs of psychopathology. For more gripping narratives of justice, true crime stories, and the relentless pursuit of truth, Subscribe to our channel